welcome to this week's episode of Stockability AI. Today, we have a good one for you. So, this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, being a fellow musician. We're going to talk about generative AI for your music production company. So, the whole idea of the episode is going to be like, hey, here's a fictitious application. In this case, it's going to be a music production studio. Let's just say that they're a mid cap company. They're doing pretty good and they want to get their generative AI strategy in line. So we're going to talk about a few things that this company can do, um, to get ahead of their competition, to become more efficient in their operations, and evolve with the up and coming world of business and how businesses are going to essentially operate in the future. So, hey, Mike, how's it
No, it's
going
it's
today?
going good. Another good day, and I love this topic. I love talking about music.
Yeah.
Music is the one constant in my life throughout my entire life. I've always been had music on in the background. I'm a big fan. Go to a lot of shows, and this is definitely something that's concerning. But in the grand scheme of things, I think that the humans win out on this one because the the music is too personal. I think it could be good background music. It'll be fine for elevators and maybe for some motion pictures scores and stuff like that. But I'm excited about the idea of this small studio because they're the ones who would be concerned, right? They're the ones who are making music professionally, and they don't get to ignore this. And like any other business, you have to know where your threats are coming from. And this is definitely going to be a threat to anybody who's in the music business.
Yeah. I agree. So I really like this topic because I don't think this isn't a new thing. So I'm a musician. I have a lot of background in music, and this isn't really a new thing for people that are making music. So especially the companies that are making soundtracks and scores and working in advertising, um, really any kind of music generation you do through a DAW, right? So these are programs like Pro Tools, and there's all kinds of plugins. And AI has been all over this stuff for like the last decade. So it's not really new at all. What's interesting though is the making of actual tracks, right? Like off of a prompt. So this is where we get into the whole generative AI part of it. As the listeners know, generative AI is a version of artificial intelligence that works off of a text input, multimodality input. It could be um, speech, it could be text, and then it gives you an output. An output could be text, obviously, it can be video, and also can be audio. So this is kind of the new part of it, in terms of this working within the realm of a music production studio. So that's one part of it. A music production studio is also very similar to any other business in a lot of ways, outside of the fact that they're producing music. They also have to, you know, they have a day to day business function. They have workflows in place. They have to schedule projects. So all of this, this sort of thing that works within a traditional business also applies to this sort of business as well, right?
Yeah, and what we've found through having all these conversations with small businesses is that a lot of times they don't have their own business running smoothly without AI. So they're running into problems and they're looking for AI to solve certain problems that you can't really start there. You have to have your stuff in order. You have to have your data clean. You have to have, systems in place, processes written down. And no matter what the business is, there are certain ways that you need to be running your business for any tool to really help. And so if you're not organized, if you don't have all of your data and information that you want to train on or use in one place, you're already starting behind the eight ball. Um, so I think that with these smaller businesses, like when we talk to them, it's like, okay, well, you're not you're not doing all of these things right in the first place. So we got to fix these things, and then we could put a workflow on top of it where AI could probably assist in certain places. But when you're doing music production, that's a highly skilled creative process. It's a honed talent. You have your ear and your tools. And I know they've been using a lot of software in the music business for a long time, but this seems a little different because you can type a prompt. Like when I was in that program called Loudly, it says, give me a song for running on a beach at sunset. And you get a choice between electronica, house, drum and bass. You have a bunch of different things, and you push a button and you have three different versions that you could listen to. I didn't have any rock in that one anyway. No rock and roll. but,
Yeah.
but
Well, it's 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 very easy to produce techno and electronic music, right? Because that sort of thing is very easily programmable. I mean, you can program rock music as well, but also it's a genre that's very like popular. Like people like that more than rock, so maybe that has something to do with that. But you know, um, I so before we get into like the actual like some things that you can do as the owner of this company to start to think about some innovative ways to become uh, more cutting edge and efficient. I really like the idea of like training your own, like having your own database of music, right? Um, and this would be good for this sort of company because if you're making soundtracks and you're making scores, you're you're probably going through and you're producing a lot of different ideas for one specific client. Like you're not going to go write a score and then that's going to be the one. Like you're probably going through like three or four of these things, but what happens to those three or four scores that aren't good enough to make the cut? So maybe one thing that you could do is start accumulating these, right? But then put them into a model and have different permutations made of that those we'll call them like I don't call them rejects, but call them cuts that didn't really make it. So maybe they are rejects, but they I'm sure that they sound pretty good, and it just you could have like a content library based off of your own stuff that you've been making for clients, and that grows over time, and maybe you could like open that up as a subscription, use it for your other stuff. But I think also you can do I like the idea of like sentiment analysis. If you can figure out like, hey, this sort of genre of music is really working for this sort of commercial, like you have the data, right? So you can make more data driven decisions. So kind of just an example of where you could go with it, at a certain point in
yeah,
time,
and
right?
I think I guess the data models, these music generating ones, could learn your style of music in the same way.
Yeah,
You can learn the style
correct.
of your writing, and you could write in your voice, and that would probably be useful in just getting started the same way. As a writer, I'll just type in an idea into chat gpt and say, give me some ideas about this thing, and or give me a blog post about this subject, and then I
Mhm.
start with that, and then it's like, okay, now I read through that and I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool, it's got a couple good ideas. So maybe maybe it'll help generate some more ideas for the composers of that music in that way. Y-
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's one of my favorite things to use ChatGPT for is just like curing the blank slate problem and just getting 50% of the way, like going from 0 to 50 very quickly. Um, it's huge, right? And it really, to me, it comes down to like the cognitive load that happens. If you can like not burn your brain out and then start from a place where you already have some of the answers, like what comes out is really way more creative. So I love just vibing off of that whole thing that happens because you can apply that to so many things within like the creative field, paired with generative AI. But So let's like rewind a little bit here, and talk about some more like, you know, obvious, tangible things that a company like this could do. Think about doing right off the bat. And to me, I really like the idea of pairing, some of this stuff with like an automation, because I think that one of the big things, and it's not like I wouldn't really consider this AI at all, but I see automations becoming more and more interesting and popular, because it works really good within the whole AI conversation, right? So maybe one thing that you could do is you could build an automation, and by an automation, just to be clear, this is taking a workflow. So take a simple example of a workflow of scheduling a a customer, right? They're coming in, they're gonna make you guys are gonna work on a project together. So there's a whole series of things that have to happen to that. Like you have an initial email, you have them coming into the studio to record, you have to schedule it, right? Obviously, this is in order, but you have to do all of these things, and they're very manual processes. So now, in the example of automating this stuff, is maybe an email comes in, right? And now they're like, "Hey, I want to do business with you." Like you have like the whole initial outreach, and then that could go hook up to your calendar, and then you have the ability to not have to go search for time because your calendar is already up to sync, and it puts a meeting on your calendar. You sit with the person, you have a 30-minute, 45-minute intro. Whatever happens after that, like that's the first human touch point. After that, you can, um, depending upon like what your next step in the workflow is, maybe it is, you know, going back and forth on some ideas, right? At that point, they're going to come in, sit down, and you guys will work together, depending upon like how it goes. But um,
Yeah,
yeah,
there's some AI tools now that will do, handle that whole interaction. It could go right from your LinkedIn, or it could go from your Instagram, and it'll go take you through the process of setting up an appointment, and it'll take the notes. It'll have a workflow where it'll email the person to remind them that there's a meeting tomorrow, ask them for whatever questions you might have. So in the email, the person who, when they show up, they'll be prepared with the information that you're looking for to give them the best advice. So like that type of automations that are happening now. And if you've purchased anything on Instagram recently, like a lot of that stuff is being incorporated into all of these, into these businesses that are very transactional. But there's no reason why it couldn't be, for something like this in the music business or any business really.
yeah. So step one is all the low hanging fruit, right? So this is basically the day to day business operations, scheduling, email correspondence, any sort of content generation to an extent. I would be careful about the content generation part, because I do think that you know don't go ahead and just ask your favorite LLM to give you some content and then go use it. Like definitely make it your own. I like to stress that quite a bit because it's very important. Um, so
Yeah, I've been very leery about using
yeah,
any like the Google AI stuff for responding to emails and things like that. I'm very nervous about having, like I'll use it to maybe, again, to kind of ideate and to think about like, okay, I want to send an email to these people to use a call to action, to get them to want to have a meeting or something like that. But then I always like read it, rewrite it, and then I would use it. But some of these things are
yeah,
a little too automated for me. And you could usually tell when you get the email that it's been generated by AI instead of a person wrote it, because they're words that people don't generally use in conversation that are in the emails. So you definitely want to be
yeah.
leery of that.
You can your human spidey senses pick up on it quite
Yeah,
quickly.
for sure, for sure.
so I like. I would say we're already at the point where that's going to start becoming like it's gonna work against you for
Yeah.
sure. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, enhance creativity, innovation, streamline workflows. Obviously, all this results into cost savings and efficiency. Um, so I know, Mike, that you were looking into a few of these different tools that make AI
Yeah.
music. So I know that that's not the whole premise of this episode, but it would be cool to jump into some tooling to at least say, okay, fine, if this is the type of company that we're talking about, you know, a company that produces original music for soundtrack, what is the AI competition looking like right now? And what are some of the pros and some of the
Well,
cons?
I can tell you, as a pro, for me, somebody who loves music but doesn't have any musical talent whatsoever, the ability to go in and choose a genre, and you could actually mix genres in the program I was using,
Mhm.
and then you can change the key, you can change the general um, sound of it, the speed of it, so for somebody like me who has no skills musically, that's cool. I was like, this is pretty
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah,
For free, I
sure.
got, generated 25 30-second clips, and if I wanted to pay for it, I could get up to a 7-minute song that I'm creating. AI is creating it, but I have input into it, right? And these songs were, they're, bossa nova background music type songs. They're not, things that have lyrics, although I think there are some that now, if you could, type in the lyrics of a song, and maybe somebody wants to create a song that way, that would be fun. Like I said, for somebody who doesn't create music on my own, but I like it. It's a fun tool to play with. But for the real
Yeah,
musicians,
sure.
I imagine just same way, the writers feel like there's definitely a threat there, because the LLMs, like we said, now are writing things. We can tell that they're writing them, but they're the worst they're ever going to be. So 5 years from now, you know everything's going to be written in AI, or by AI, and it's going to be AI writing to AI, and it's going to be this weird.
Yeah, it's gonna
Yeah,
be
yeah. It's
bananas.
just it's just strange, when you look at the way OpenAI now is with this new release, being able to have conversations with it, real time, real time translations, all of these things that are happening in like leaps and bounds. And somebody who like lived in Mexico for a couple of years, I I would have loved to have had that real time translator. Just have
Yeah,
it up here, talk to
I
this,
know.
and it tells me exactly what everybody needs, and I could respond, and they know what I'm saying. um but with the music stuff and with writing and these creative processes, there's definitely a threat, but it's like you have to be able to adapt, and you have to be able to integrate these tools so that the people who are afraid to, they're the ones who will, be out of work, not you.
Yeah. I think you nailed it on like that's the whole concept right there. It's a lot of this stuff like AI is just going to eat so many things, but you kind of need to stay on the as much in the bleeding edge as possible here with it, because in my opinion that's the only way to go about it, you know, like you're picking up on. Um so I'm curious about how royalties work in this case. I understand that some of these tools, they retain the copyright on them, but some of them they allow it. They allow you to be the owner of the content, similar to like an image LLM or Midjourney or something like that, right? Where you generate the imagery and it's yours. So, what did you find when you were looking through
Well,
these tools
th-
in regards to that?
the music business has been, right now, like most bands, it doesn't matter what their streaming is or whatever, the only money they make is basically by touring. They, this
Hmm. Right.
Spotify, there's that, famous clip that goes around with Snoop dog, and he said, he got a certificate from Spotify that there were a billion streams on one of his songs, and he got 45,000 bucks.
Here you go, have a
Yeah, here's your
certificate.
certificate and $45,000 for a billion
Yeah.
streams. That's an insane. It's
It's
ridiculous.
ridiculous.
Right.
Completely
So it's like,
ridiculous.
with, and I don't even know what the Apple one is, but I'm sure it's similar. But with that kind of, you know, demand, and there's such a little payout. The problem is that Spotify and these playlists, if you go in there and you look at them, there are these playlists that are AI generated music. So if a person goes and creates them, and he has the right to do that, and then he's creating all of these songs. There's a guy in Sweden who had 5 billion streams, and he was, so he's getting this money from, Spotify to stream this stuff.
Yeah.
And so say if it's 5 billion, if the number was right, that would be $200,000 he would make, that other artists are no longer, getting a cut of. So that this guy who's just generating AI music after AI music after AI music, and who knows with these phone farms I've seen, where they have these things set up where they're just streaming songs on all these different fake accounts, and they're paying the royalties to whoever came up with the scheme, I guess. Or if you want to think of it in a little bit more nefarious way, that Spotify is encouraging and or making money on these AI playlists and not paying royalties, collecting the royalties
Oh,
themselves,
for sure.
so
100 100%. Like, 'cause imagine that, like, yeah, they're not paying out really that much, but they have to pay out something. There's so many artists generating, and putting their music on Spotify. You think I would love to know what like Spotify's annual payout is to all of their streaming, artists. And I mean, that would be your answer right there. Like, I'm sure it's in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, I have to look it up and see. I'd be interested to know, but like, why wouldn't they want to save that? I did read about the his name was like Bjorn something or another, right? Could you look that up? It'd be good to know who that was. I did read about that, and I guess what's happening is, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can go and you can find this guy or this bot or whoever this person is. Their music is on like a lot of these types of playlists, right? They're like electronica kind of like playlists, and um, probably 100% AI generated. So it's uh, it's quite
yeah.
interesting.
And there's a lot of things that are happening with Spotify specifically, because I mean, right now that's really Spotify or Apple Music is where all of the music
Mhm.
is coming from. I think there's a couple of other streamers that that have it, but the two big dogs are Apple and the and Spotify. And they're the subscription model. This guy that we were talking, I was listening to a podcast, and this guy, his name is Ted Gioia. He's a writer. He's written like 12 books
Mhm.
on the birth of cool and all jazz related things. And he's concerned that they're faking the numbers, and that the numbers really aren't real, and that Spotify, the
Sorry,
numbers
what
of
numbers?
streams, like the
You're
number
talking
of
about, like,
streams, and
yeah.
they've stopped reporting the number of new subscribers. So these companies that are doing these subscription business models, they're kind of tapping out on what the number of new subscribers that they could possibly add. So it's no longer
Mhm.
accounting for the their where their revenue is coming from. But what he was saying is, it's not only Spotify. It's you see Netflix now. It's like they have to put commercials and things, and they have to once the market gets saturated with your product in a subscription model, the only way to make any money year over year is to raise prices. So now if you're doing
Yeah.
this AI music, which is, we'll say, like the lowest common denominator of music, we've kind of raced right down to the bottom of the creative process and said, okay, we're just going to have billions of streams that are going to be AI generated, and we're going to facilitate this process, not pay artists, and keep the money, that's that's shady shit. It's like, like, and it's happening.
Yeah.
That's the because
No, and that's the whole problem, right? And it's hard to be somebody here and being like, "This is how you should use, generative AI within your company." I still do think that there are obviously many ways to make this work, but I think the sweet spot really is to boost your efficiency, your profitability, and like the way your company works, but not race to the bottom. Because that's the really hard part. Because if you start doing this at scale, like you like inevitably always are racing to the bottom, especially when you're talking about something like this, because it's hard to wrap your brain around something that just so I was listening to Tom Petty's uh, uh, greatest hits playlist on Spotify with my son during dinner. I love Tom Petty, right? He's great. And I was like thinking about it in the lens of AI, and I'm like, there's no way in hell that like this is like AI can't make music this good, like that easily. And I don't want to listen to it because it's like, even if it could make it sound like it, you're missing like all of the emotion. Like some of the songs are really happy, and like some of the songs are like about heartbreak and this, that, and the other thing. And like, yeah, like you could make the argument and be like, okay, well, like generative AI can just, you know, come up with these lyrics that are like sad and everything. It probably will, but I'm wondering if it's like really going to like miss the human depth of it. Like it can do all of this stuff. Technically, it can make it sound like a certain genre. It can generate lyrics that are happy, sad, etc. And could say, yeah, you could put that together and it'll work. But it's just like when you generate an image using an LLM and it's cold. Like no matter what, it's missing that human element. I think it would probably be the same thing.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
think it's
know.
like a bad cover band. It's like it would be a bad cover band. And I love the example of Tom Petty because I love him too. And he's I was fortunate enough to see him live. Great, great experience, great music. Was writing, great songs until he passed. And the idea that you're hitting on there with the human factor, right? It's got that you're able to, if you're writing a score for a movie, you get to sit there and watch the movie and think like, oh man, this should be creepy right now, and this, how can I get the creepiest sound? And it's, you want to use these low bass noises and things that'll like kind of give people chills. And then when you're writing a happy, in the summertime when the weather is, and it's got this history to them, depth, like you said, they're depth, they're not cold things. And I think with like EDM and these kind of things, it's, like we said earlier, it's a little easier to fake it because it's loops and it's trickery anyway. So
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. You're you're creating the emotion based off of drum and bass and synth and like they're so that's like much easier, right? Because
Mhm.
it's electronic at its core. Like it's called electronic music. So I mean, yeah, um but we'll see. Um that's what people like to listen to. So maybe it won't be a problem. Maybe this will all just sing
Yeah,
some
well, I mean,
sweets
in that
or
area, it won't be a problem because and look, musicians have been using tools, forever. I mean, if you look at, like Keith Richards playing, some songs, he only has 5 strings on the guitar and they're tuned to a different thing, so, and they're using, reverb and all of these different tricks and tools to, you know evoke a feeling, the spirit of something, and to tell a story. And that, so if, it's maybe the next obvious step, and maybe it's not really going to be a big deal. But I find it, if you're in the music, creating business, And I know, like, for myself as a filmmaker, if I could go ahead and use AI to create, write my script and put it in there, and I could get to watch my script, that's what any writer wants to do, right? They want to be able to do that. And now if I go and now I have my video and it looks good, and now I could go ahead and throw some background music on it and not have to pay for that, and could tweak it a little bit. And I'm not going to become a professional musician, but if I can, fake it till I make it, or until I can afford somebody to, to do it for me, um, I could see applications for it for the non-musician for sure. But you as a musician, what do you like? How would you use it for the music that you're writing or doing?
Um, that's a good question. I haven't yet, but I would. Uh, I don't know. I would probably use it as a filler for things that I can't play. And I would use it to generate different kinds of tracks and different kinds of effects. But again, like this is all things that you can do within something like Pro Tools, anyways, with like a bunch of plugins and like a MIDI controller. So I don't really know. Like I don't I I don't see any real for me like practical. I'm not a professional musician, right? Um, I do it for fun and hobby, and I like playing actual instruments, and I like recording them into Pro Tools. So I don't know if I'm a good example. If I was a professional, then I can tell you what I would use it for. I would use it for ideation, right? Like you mentioned before, I would use it to get like a jump start on certain things quickly, right? To kind of like maybe rough out some ideas. Say if I'm working on a commercial, I might I might be like I can make the argument that it's easier and more efficient to just prompt something the way that I'm feeling that I think that the sound track should sound like and have it give it back to me. And then I would take it from there and I would do, whatever I would have to do to make it like really perfect. I also think that there is a good play here in figuring out like emergent trends in music based off of like big data and analysis. And this is kind of what I was hitting on before. So I think that would be a pretty good use case because I think that's going to be very important in the future because what's going to happen is if all of this goes the way of AI and AI eats music, eats the industry, like there's going to be a point where you're going to, and you're still making, this is under the assumption that you're still making music as a company because that's part of what you're doing. I would use the AI to figure out new genres and tweak genres and figure out how it matches with like an advertising tone and what people want, right? To really because at the end of the day, you're tapping into somebody's like emotional system and you're trying to trigger them to buy something based off of how they feel. And music is a core piece of that whole equation, right? So how do you do that? I mean, you see this in like because it comes down to strategy. You see this in racing, right? Um, take like a Formula One race, for example. There's a group of engineers in the background and every team, and they're running simulations on different race outcomes. Like, just do the same thing for music. Do the same thing for your score. Like, hey, look, which one is really going to stick here? Like, which one is the
Yeah,
best? So I think that would be a good
yeah,
use case.
they do that with Instagram, for instance. They'll like have
Mhm.
trending music,
Yeah.
trending voiceovers, trending things, and they, people use those because they're effective, right? So they have these tools that you can look to see what are the trending sounds, what's the trending music, and then you could probably create
Yeah.
rip-offs of those too, with the AI,
Yeah. Or at least like, yeah. So I think that there's a few use cases here, but to me, outside of that, um, I think the big use case is just, you know, optimizing your business with as many workflows as possible, automated workflows, right? So you can keep a core set of employees
Hmm.
intact, right? And not necessarily as you grow the business, like have to grow too many people. I think that's like, where a lot of the
Yeah, I
value will
think
be
I
found.
think there's
So
efficiencies that AI is going to provide in all aspects of every business that are going to, look at Tyler Perry, was going to build a whole new studio and decided not to because you don't necessarily need all those backgrounds and places for things if you could, green screen them and or create them with AI, the backgrounds, or even use the
right.
actors. There's a lot of those changes that are coming to the creative process. But my thinking on it is just that, to your point about it being cold, and it's just not good quality stuff, and these companies are, racing to the bottom. I think we said, it's like, what are we
Exactly.
going to do? You're just going to have what, AI music and AI movies and AI all of this stuff. Like, what's the point?
Yeah.
What are we doing? Like,
There
yeah.
is no point. It's Yeah, it's pointless to go to that level. That's why I think, and this is what I tell everybody that asks me this and they come to me and they're like, "Hey, how do I do this?" I'm like, "Don't go full bore, like all in. Like you're not an AI company. You don't want to be an AI company. You want to use again generative AI and automations, workflow automations in a smart way so your business is running
Optimized.
as
Yeah,
efficient as
yeah, yeah.
possible. Yes, it's a straight up optimization play
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, I could see that. And if used, judiciously and, intelligently, it can definitely help the business grow faster. It could be something that'll create super efficiencies in various ways. Like I said, even the beginning workflow tool, like if from lead gen to having a meeting, without having to do anything, because all could be automated, and all of a sudden your calendar is filling up with appointments for this type of service. So like if you just did that alone, now you got more meetings, more leads, more money, in any business, right? So those opportunities are there for these businesses to do, and it would probably be cheaper than hiring another person to do that, because you're going to be able to have this done without whatever the subscription price is, and you're done. You don't have insurance, you don't have all those other factors that come with having another employee. So there's definitely efficiencies that can happen regardless of the business. But when I think about the music stuff and anything that's creative, and like you said, it, generating emotions and stuff, AI is going to be able to copy a lot of that stuff, and it's going to be able to manipulate you into thinking, that it's not AI, and it's going to be able to manipulate your feelings and emotions. So what do you think? Is there is it is it do we just witness this? Do we just watch it, go to, like, where everything is AI, and we're just, like, we
Yeah.
keep
Unfortunately, probably yes. I don't think it's
yeah,
stoppable. So we're at the point of the conversation where we've come to like, okay, it's like
it always
the
comes back to one
it's
big
where
AI circle jerk. It's like,
yes, exactly. It's first it's a massive nosedive off a cliff, and then it's just
yeah,
this
yeah,
like you
AI
said,
AI generated stuff
perpetual.
for AI generated people for AI generated products. It's what do
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's just I don't know. I have a hard time wrapping my brain. But for now, let's just stick with the value, and the value is like let's just have companies that you can just think about this. Like if I was to just be like say in the most like basic term, like get all the people together that you want to work with that provide as much value as possible and that you can make great shit with every single day and keep them, right? So yeah, you know, I look at it this way. Think about this like your business like this. Like you get everybody together that you want to work with. You know, in this case, it's a creative beast. Like you're making music. So you're gonna step one, build the business off of a culture. where you have people that you want to work with that are doing great and keep them. So now you can keep these people. You don't have to scale the company in ridiculous ways where, okay, say I need to schedule more work, I need to now go and hire another secretary or an admin or anything like that. Like that's one case where I'm like, I can get on board with without having to hire a human being. Like I am pro human. I want to give people jobs, but like nobody wants that job anyways. Like the admin stuff can you can build a strategy around that, and it's going to be way better for everybody that a machine does that.
Yeah, and
So
then they don't want to. Nobody wants to do that part anyway. I'm sure people who don't have a job would take the job and they would do it, but it's not their life passion to go ahead and schedule appointments for sales meetings. I doubt there I doubt there are people who, there might be, but let's just assume that it doesn't. So I like what your idea is about. You keep your core people, the most creative, the people that are the most valuable to your company, and then you fill in workflow tools and some AI stuff for all the stuff that doesn't really matter. And then if you're using that to create ideas, using the tools, the AI tools to generate ideas, to get off the blank page, as we like to say, now you're going to have these people who are going to be more efficient. They're going to have more time to focus on what they're really good at, which is using tools to create sounds that will evoke emotion and will sell product. I mean, that's really what the whole purpose of it is anyway.
totally. Yeah. Cool. So we have about 10 minutes left here, 10, 15 minutes. I want to touch on the
Mm-hmm.
Rick Beato interview.
Yeah.
So for the listeners, can you explain to everyone who Rick
Yeah.
Beato is?
Rick Beato is a guy. He's been a music producer and musician for, you know, 40 years. And he has produced some of the, best albums and, worked with the best bands in the world. And he has a podcast basically that's a instructional podcast, and he does interviews and he does different things with music. And so he just had a guest on, and his guy's name is Ted Joya, and he's the guy I mentioned earlier. He's a writer and audiophile, and he's known as the person who's a foremost authority on American jazz and other things. And he's got a cool process. He said he listens to 25 new albums per week, and then he tries it in every genre, every type of music from all over the world, and tries to find new and innovative music, and then writes a substack about it. And one of the things that they focused on in the beginning of it is what is AI's threat to music. And he was the one who he kind of mentioned a lot of the problems that he's seeing with Spotify, in the fact that these AI generated songs, whether or not it's that this guy Johan is the one we were talking about earlier, the Swedish guy, he was using AI to generate massive playlists. And he was going through, and Ted Joya was he's an expert in jazz, and he was looking at these jazz playlists, and he starts exploring, like, okay, well, who is this person? Well, who is this person? Who is this person? Like, and each, he had dozens and dozens of pseudonyms, and he just kept saying, well, all these people are in Sweden. They're like, what's going on here? And so he,
Yeah,
yeah,
there you go. There's a
exactly.
smoking
So,
gun.
because
It's Daniel Eck who
yeah.
freaking
And
yeah.
it's like, so he starts looking into this thing, and then all of a sudden it's like this guy, is responsible for, 5 billion streams, and there's no person other than himself doing this, and that leads into the the way that royalties work is that, like, they come from a pool of money that's for royalties. And when somebody goes and has 5 billion streams, that's taking a large chunk of those royalties. And then he started talking about how Spotify itself was creating these playlists and AI playlists, and so they're basically moving money from one pocket to another. And all of this time, it's taking away from real artists who are really created this music. And nobody, they're not getting any royalties for the music that they had created, because it's now being chewed up by AI. So that's something, that's disturbing. And like we said earlier, that it's kind of a messed up model anyway, in terms of artists making hardly any money for as many streams as they have. But when it's operationalized, it's very, very damaging to the real music creators.
Yeah. That's unfortunate coming from a platform like Spotify if that's really what's
Yeah.
happening. Because you're basically saying, okay, because you know that if this is what's happening, like it's gonna continue to ramp, and if eventually that's just gonna be like Spotify is gonna be like a two-person company or whatever. Like it's just gonna be completely different than what it is, right? And that's gonna suck. But I could see where that might go that way, especially if you've you've met like critical mass in terms of your subscription rate, and you can't move the needle much more. Like, what are you gonna do? I mean, there's other things you can do, but to go down the full blown like generative AI,
Yep.
path for music is definitely a
Yeah. Well,
strategy. So that's interesting.
the only way for subscription, like once you reach saturation, the only way for these companies to make money year over year and to grow is to by cutting, right? So they're gonna, they'll cut jobs first, and then they'll increase the subscription prices, or they'll just do the same thing, and throw commercials in and throw all this stuff in, where, the reason why we got away from all of these things, it's all comes back, it all comes full circle. It's like the when Time Warner and AOL merged, and they were talking about, oh, people will be paying $200 a month for their television subscriptions, and we were paying like 35, and I was like, this is insane. Like, how do they $200? It's nuts. Now everybody I know is paying over 100, and even if people who, cut the cord, so to speak, they now you have to pay for, now you're paying for Netflix, and you're paying for Hulu or Disney Plus, or this subscription, that subscription, Yahoo TV, I mean, YouTube TV. Now you're instead of paying AOL Time Warner, 200 a month, you're paying probably 250, because you have, you're paying for your cable, you're paying for your recorder on your cable boxes, and then so it's death by a thousand cuts. They get you every single way. So why wouldn't music do the same thing that Netflix is doing? I used to have a free Netflix with my T-Mobile, and then that went away, and now it's one user, and it's with commercials. So it's like, well, what am I doing? Like, why would I even, and they're not creating new content. They're not creating stuff that, they were a couple of years ago. Now they're doing less and less new material. So what are we doing? Like, why would I keep that subscription? And when this goes, I mean, we're going to go back, and I'm going to start ripping DVDs again. Just start get my old DVD ripper, and just start hit the lime wire, and go old school.
Maybe that would be amazing if DVD rippers and LimeWire could like come back to like we just
Go
go
full
full
retro,
retro.
yeah. Why not? There's, I mean, it happened with
Yeah.
vinyl, right? There's not enough vinyl presses to keep up with demand at all.
Vinyl's killing it, man. But I wanted to create a vinyl subscription business. I had like some business ideas around that, and it would be so much fun. The problem is like there's a lot of overhead to like where I mean, you probably get around the warehousing part of it, if you find out like direct shipping plays and stuff, but, um, yeah, like, there's not a lot of vinyl, um, manufacturing
They said
companies,
they're like
and
8 years
the ones that
behind
do
or something
exist,
like that.
they're like they have like, that's a company I would love to own one of those, man. I mean, they literally have, like because what happens is, like and this is, like, a total, like, um, segue here, but imagine like ABBA comes in or one of these like huge artists and they want to do like a mass production of whatever. I mean, that's going to plug up the whole operation for like God knows how long, right? So it just like further compounds like the queue. So it's like okay, Now I'm just like an independent artist, and now like I'm not going to get priority, but I really want like you to. I want this company that's awesome at pressing records that does really quality presses, because then you could get like, there's all like these like color combinations, and they're pieces of art, right? So you can't, like, in some cases, the guys that are really good at doing these, people go to them for a reason, because the records are super high quality pieces of art. So
Yeah, it's like the Jack
yeah,
White album.
these are the businesses right here that don't need us. They don't need AI consultants, because
Yeah. Well, I mean, Jack White did
as,
that
as
album
long
with
as
where he had like a 45 speed. He if depending on where you played it, it was an acoustic entrance
yeah,
to the song or electric
yeah,
guitar, and
yeah,
78 speed in the middle, and you could play the label. It was super creative, and like you said,
amazing.
that was pre AI. You could probably figure out how to do that
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's cool.
yeah.
All right, well, I think that does it. Good episode. I hope everyone got something out of this. Appreciate you guys stopping by. As always, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, help us grow the channel. Hopefully we're pumping out some quality content here that everyone finds useful. And until next time,
Keep on
keep
rocking.
rocking.